Sure. Evening, everyone. Hope you're all well, and welcome to whoever's tuned in online as well. Just before I start the apologies for absences and substitutions, I think that there's probably an explanation due for the cancellation of our meeting in January this year. Unfortunately, I haven't really had too much of clear communication with Democratic Services on this, but as much as I can explain to you, and thank you, Jess, for really stepping in and helping me investigate what had happened. It looks like our former Democratic Services officer, who is no longer working with the council, forgot to send the invitations out for an unexplained reason. He's no longer working here, so I can't really dig deeper as to why that happened. So unfortunately, it was put in my diary, as I had an agenda meeting with him 1 week prior to the meeting, and it was in John's diary and weirdly Andy Oliver's diary. So I was under the impression that we were all going to attend, but unfortunately, the invitations were not sent, and I've kind of been back and forth with Democratic Services from January up until last month, where I then got an explanation and an agreement that we should be given a supplementary meeting. However, I cannot tell you when that is because I don't know and I've not been told. So that's as much as I know as an explanation to the cancellation of the meeting last January. It has never happened in all the years that we've been on the board. But I am looking into it and I will keep you posted on when that supplementary meeting will happen. If you do have any questions about that, feel free to email me about it, or we can bring it up in any other business if you've got any further questions on that. Apologies. So we've got apologies from Sean Lynch and a few others as well, but we're also welcoming Inspector Sam Pearce, who is a new addition to the Met Police representation to our meetings. We're very much used to James and Lee being here with us. So thank you for joining us. And we've got another bunch of apologies which have also been noted. But do we have any apologies that have been given to you as board members? No?
Councillor Anand.
Councillor Anand. Okay, thanks. Anyone else online?
No.
Okay, brilliant. And then the minutes, that would then be referring to our meeting that took place last November. Are we happy to approve the record of minutes held on the 14th of November?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Well, that takes me on to the board vacancies for this board. So a few things on this. We've got a couple of our community members that will be coming to the end of their tenure on this board, and that's usually, I think, 2 or 3 years. So once we are allocated a new Democratic Services officer, which is not Cornelia, but thank you, Cornelia, for stepping in today. Once we do get a permanent replacement, I will be going through with them who's kind of run out of their tenure on the board, and then that will open up more vacancies, and everyone will be emailed in well in advance to be informed of, you know, if they've come to the end of their tenure on the board. But we still do have 2 vacancies, so I'm keen to fill up one of those vacancies with a youth officer, and Jess and I have had some discussions in the last couple of weeks over someone potential who I did invite this evening but have not heard back from, but I will be chasing. And then we've got someone who was on the board over 3 or 4 years ago who wishes to rejoin, and that will, of course, they will still go through the process of interview, which Andy Oliver is on the interview panel, and we'll get them back on the board if it all works out. So we've kind of got 2 vacancies, but I'm working on filling them up. However, we will have a few more coming up throughout the middle of the year. So if you do have anyone in mind, it'd be great to have a discussion of, you know, who they are and when they can join. Now, another thing which John actually highlighted last month, and something that I've been thinking about, is that one of our former board members used to run the social media, which is basically the Twitter and the Facebook for the SNB board. In my capacity, I just don't have enough time to commit to also manning the social media for this. So it would be good if anyone on the board would like to take this responsibility on. We can start at just perhaps manning the Twitter account and get back, you know, those live forums that we do for public meetings, etc., it would be very, very helpful, actually, because I think John and I's hands are quite full. And usually, you know, one of us would take it on, but I just, you know, there has to be a limit, a limit on how many roles one person can take. So do have a think about that. Otherwise, I intend that I give that responsibility to perhaps a new board member that joins, and that can be part of the discussions on their interview if they're social media savvy, for example. So I will keep you posted on that. But if anyone on the board currently now wants to take up that role, then please do email me. That's it from me. And I will hand it over to the police report. Over to you, Lee or James or Sam. I'm not sure who's going first. If you just press the Sam, because you're not familiar with the format of these. If you could press the mic when you're speaking and then turn it off when you're not, otherwise people won't hear us that are online at home. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone in person and online. My name is James Herring. I'm Chief Inspector for Neighbourhoods for Ealing. I'm standing in for Sean Lynch, who's Superintendent, but he can't make it this evening. So just a proviso, I've actually been off for the last 7 weeks due to major knee operation, but I will do my best to give you as many of the updates as possible and be ably helped by both Lee and Sam, who are sitting next to me. So just to start with, it's been quite a busy period. And in particular, tragically, we've had 3 murders since the 13th of March. That one was in Sudbury Heights, and then we had another murder on the 27th of March, and that was at Riverside Close, and the most recent one on the 9th of April outside the Old House Public House. I'll just take a quick pause in case there's any questions for that, but I will kindly ask Sam or Lee if they might be able to get more of an update on those 3 individual murder investigations, because I wasn't around at the time. Would that be possible, gents?
Got any questions on that? About those?
Let's see who's online. Just in the first 2,
Yeah, of course. Well, if we haven't got any questions online, I'll briefly explain what the incidents were and where we are in terms of the investigation. So the first murder that we reference is the 13th of March. Police are referring it to as Operation Beambridge. A lone male was attacked in his vehicle and stabbed. He succumbed to his injuries, and there was a major investigation launched by our murder investigation team. As a result of that and media appeals that were published, a male has been arrested and charged with his murder. We believe he's the only one that we were chasing at the moment in relation to that murder. The victim was Albanian, but we don't believe his crime was racially motivated. We're still trying to work out the motivation for the crime, but it's believed that the victim and suspects knew each other. And since that incident in that area, there has been no repercussions. There's been no follow-up incidents. We flooded the area with reassurance patrols. And Op Greenbridge, as I understand it, is now closed, just pending any further media appeals and waiting for the trial. Are there any questions on Op Greenbridge and Sudbury Heights online? No, okay. I'll move on to Operation Beeson, which is the murder of Viviana Baraka, who lived at Riverside Close. We had a male arrested who has not been charged at this time because we're waiting for a special post-mortem to determine the outcome or the cause of her death. So that investigation is still very much underway, and we have 1 person of interest. He's the only person of interest in that investigation, and we're not looking at anybody else at this time. Are there any questions online about Operation Beeson and Riverside Close?
No.
Okay. Do the third.
You sure?
Yes, fine,
Okay.
yeah. And then the third murder that we're going to reference is Operation Boothdale, which took place on the 9th of April, 2024, both inside and outside the Old Hat Public House in West Ealing. And the victim was a Mark Bars, who was a local man that lived within Ealing. As part of that investigation, 3 males that are known to the victim have been arrested and charged with murder. And there's a fourth person who we're seeking charging advice on at the moment in relation to that murder as well. It's believed that they're the only 3 males that were directly linked to that crime as it was captured on CCTV. There was, of the 3 murders that we've had, Operation Boothdale did see the largest crime scene that we put in place, and it did last for 2 days across West Ealing. It displaced a number of businesses which had to close for a couple of days, and it also disrupted Ealing Rise for the Monday and Tuesday mornings whilst the investigation was ongoing. In terms of that murder, we're still trying to understand the motivation for it, but we do not believe there's anybody else outstanding at the moment. And specific to that, there's been no other incidents of note in that locality, and we don't anticipate any. In terms of the premises, because it's a licensed premises, we've worked quite closely with the venue and with the local authority, with Jess's team. There's been nothing that's come out of the recommendations in terms of what they could have done to prevent the murder. It's not a venue that's historically caused problems for the police or the local authority. So in this instance, we would classify it as an isolated incident with no sort of organisational learning for the pub. And at the moment, they are trading again. Are there any questions online in relation to that one? Okay.
Okay, I'll just go on to some of the other incidents that are happening since the last time we met generally. So we continue with Operation Brox, which is the operation linked to the ongoing protests and demonstrations across the UK, but particularly in London, around the incidents in the occupied Palestinian territories between Israel and Hamas. There are lots of demonstrations. There's been several in Ealing and quite a lot recently outside the town hall. And just to give you an indication, that takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of resources, and it takes a lot of police officers away from Ealing Borough. But that is where we are at present. There's been a lot of press, both positive and negative, depends on which side you believe in. But we still pride ourselves on being apolitical and having a very neutral stance, allowing protests and demonstrations to take place within reason, according to the laws that have been passed recently, and also public order laws that have been passed in years gone. So the other thing I've mentioned before I hand back over to Lee, since the last meeting, the Met Police has gone through a major IT infrastructure program, and it is linking the majority of our intelligence and investigative systems together on one platform, which of course has its strengths and weaknesses. And so that's one of the reasons why we haven't been able to bring a whole lot of facts and figures to share with you, the chair, and amongst others at the meeting, because it takes quite a while to get those off the new system, and not everyone has access to that system at present. So just a quick general roundup from me. There is a lot of work going on in the community, continue to rebuild and refresh the trust and confidence. And there are significant issues we have with serious violence, including the updates that Sam has just given you around some of the murder investigations. And we rely on the public, of course, to help us and to provide information where they can, as well as councillors and everyone else, to try and keep the community as safe as we can. Are there any questions for me? If it's all right, I'll just hand you over to Lee, and he's got some updates too.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone in the room, and good evening, everyone online. Just a bit about Connect. Sorry, my phone's listening to my voice and going on to Google. Just a bit about Connect. Sam and I both use Connect. We have to use it on quite a regular basis, and it's replaced our 8 systems that we had, 8 separate systems of police indices, with one overall system. It will be very good because it has to build up a database of all our intelligence and all our information, because we couldn't transfer 20 years of information and databases onto this new system, it would probably crash it on the first day. So at the moment, it's hard for us to get used to it. I'm finding it quite difficult, but I blame that on my age. But other people who are younger are finding it very much easier to use, and it's a very good system that will be very beneficial to us at a later stage because it builds up an intelligence picture. So if we have information on a location, an area, a name, we can put that information in. It would give us an overall picture of what's happened at that location, for instance, and will be a good tool for us to use for historic information. We still can get access on our old systems, but everything new has to go on to Connect. So that just describes it. It replaces 8 indices and is one total package. So it is good. Right, so I haven't got any data, as my boss said, Mr. Herring said, that hopefully I will be able to get that at some point in the future. If I do, I can forward it to you. But I would definitely try and come armed with some data next meeting. So I was going to talk about 2 things. I was going to talk about the new Met for London, and apologies for those that have been to any of the new Met for London events, because I'm going to talk about some things that you may have heard about. I know, John, you hosted one at one point for us, and Jess, I think you've been at every one. I have. So thank you very much. Councillor Anand, I think you've been to one of ours. 2, sorry, apologies. Sorry. So there you go. So apologies to anyone if I'm repeating things, but I think it's a good thing for us really to talk about. And the second part of my sort of time, I'm going to talk about our business engagement days that I spoke to you at one of the previous meetings. And I'm going to just give you an update on that and how it went and how I think we can make some improvements in the future and what we can do in the future about it. So if I go back to the new Met for London, we've now had 3 events. The first one was in August last year, and that was our first initial event. And we had a special guest appearance from the Commissioner who answered questions on the stage, as well as the AC, I believe it was. Yes. Yeah, Matt Jukes, who's the acting commissioner as well. So not only the commissioner, but the acting commissioner. And then obviously we had Sean Wilson, the borough commander, Sean Lynch, and various other people from the senior leadership team. And that was an all big sort of glossy with 250 people, and that was held at the University of West London on Ealing. And it's probably the only place that we could hold that with that many people. But we had various other remits from the Metropolitan Police, including TSG, dogs, Marine Support Units, our outreach team, cadets, specials, and quite a few other areas for people to talk to. I found that personally very interesting and very good. Talking to most of the public, they found it very interesting as well. But it was quite wide and it was very glossy, and some of the feedback that we had from that was to make it more localized and make it more attuned to safer neighbourhoods. So we've listened to what people have said, we've taken that feedback, and the second one was held in Southall at the Dominion Theatre in December, beginning of December, where we had about 60 to 70 guests or members of the public that turned up, and it was generally was then Mr. Wilson downwards. So we didn't have anyone come from commissioner level or acting commissioner level. It was our own senior leadership team. And again, I thought that went very well. We had lots of questions from the floor that we managed to answer. We took away some actions, and Mr. Lynch presented quite a topical presentation to everyone. The recent one that we've just had that was in March 26th, so only a few weeks ago, was at Acton Primary Garden School, which is in the heart of Acton, South Acton itself. And it was very much more localised and very much more tailored to safer neighbourhoods. That was run by Mr. Lynch. So we're dropping off, dare I say, the higher senior leadership team, like the borough commanders and the AC and the commission, and we're tailoring it down to ourselves as neighbourhood officers and neighbourhoods in itself. And we had, it was quite a rainy, cold night, and we still had, I assessed about 70 people turn up. So it's quite a good number of people that turned up. We even had some people that arrived from Hammersmith and Shepherd's Bush because they didn't have anything that was happening on their borough, and they wanted to see what it was. So people turned up from another borough, which was quite interesting and quite a different take on it as well. But again, Mr. Lynch presented about half an hour presentation. We had guest speakers on stage as well from the local communities, and the rest of the duration, which was probably about 2 hours, spent on answering questions from the floor, because there were a lot of questions. And that's really quite good in my book, because that's people with from the local community that have local questions and want to have their opportunity to find out A, what police are doing, and B, how police are going to resolve their issues, and what we're going to do in the future to keep them safe. So we spoke about a lot of things, and I think it's a much better event if it's more localized. So just for future planning, they're every 3 months. So the next one is going to be 3 months from now. I've forgotten the exact date. Beginning of June. And it's going to be in North Alton, Greenford area. And then we'll revert back to Ealing 3 months after, and then Southall, Acton. And so we're going to go around the borough, different locations, but it's generally every 3 months. So at a glance from the last New Met for London, we had 3 pillars that we're trying to adhere to, and that's community crime fighting is the first one. And that's to make the strongest ever neighbourhood policing, tackling violence against women and girls, better results for victims, and prevention through proactive and precise approach. The second pillar is culture change, and that's embedded values and principles of policing by consent, become more diverse and inclusive, and that we need to root out discrimination and raise our standards. And the last pillar is fixing our foundations, which is building a well-run organisation and making it easier for our workforce to deliver for our communities, and transform our leadership and learning, growing our people skills. So 3 pillars: community crime fighting, culture change, and fixing our foundations, which is quite a huge task to try and undertake, and it's nothing really that can be changed overnight. These are medium to long-term plans, but there are lots of actions in place to make those changes, and I was just going to talk about a few of them now. But before I do, are there any questions so far from anyone? Take that as a no. Okay, thank you. Happy to answer what I can at the end. So we ourselves, or we've been promised a small police officer uplift, but quite a large PCSO uplift. Now, for those that aren't aware, the easiest way to differentiate is a police officer wears white shirt uniform and a PCSO wears a blue shirt. PCSOs generally do not have arrest powers, they have detaining powers. But to me as a neighbours inspector, and I know Sam will say the same, they are key to the effective running of every single ward. And the reason why I say that is because they are the eyes and ears of the community, and people often engage with them every day, every time that they're out, and that's their role, to engage with the community, to engage with the businesses, and to talk to people, to build that trust and to give that confidence that if that person says anything to that PCSO, that they'll come back, tell the police officers, and we'll act on it. PCSOs do not get abstracted from their role, so their role is to be on the ward every day that they're working, whereas sometimes police officers make arrests, they're then off the wards, they sometimes get abstracted to do other things, so they're not there every single day, although they are there most of their shift. But compared to a PCSO, PCSOs do not get abstracted for any reason, so they're there every part of their shift. So we have quite a large number coming to West area, and West area comprises of 3 boroughs, which is Hillingdon, Hounslow and Ealing. So we've got quite a large number coming over a 3-year period. And I've already started to see an increase in PCSO numbers. We've had 5 or 6 increased in the last few months alone. And we will continue to get more. That's for Ealing, sorry, that's for Ealing Borough. And we will continue to get more. So on the busy enhanced wards, so our busier wards will potentially have, at the end of another 2 years, we'll have 3 to 4 PCSOs. whereas the smaller wards or the less busier wards and less crime affected wards will potentially, some may remain with one, some will remain with two. It all depends on the ward itself and the crime volume and the volume of PCSOs that we need to help that ward to improve it. So that's making a huge difference. So PCSO uplift is quite a significant thing. There is also a consultation that is happening right now that actually is about PCSO powers as well. So PCSOs will have enhanced powers. What that exactly means, I don't know, because that's way above my pay grade. But there are consultations in progress at the moment to give them enhanced powers. At the moment, they can't arrest anyone, they can't put handcuffs on anyone, but they can detain people for 30 minutes. And they have very limited use of force powers. So I will keep you appraised as to what that is, because I'm interested to find that out myself as well. So the other commitment from the new Met for London is that we will have a minimum of 2 DWOs per ward. That's dedicated ward officers. That's a mayoral pledge, and sometimes it's not always been easy to have 2 DWOs per ward, but we are striving to make that the case, a minimum of 2 on every single ward. So we've got 24 wards, so that will be 48 DWOs. Which we are thereabouts, right on the money for that at the moment, but some of our wards are also enhanced. So for Ealing Broadway, for instance, which is a very busy ward, lots of throughput, lots of traffic, we have 4 DWOs on that ward. Some are enhanced, some are not. Again, it depends upon the volume of the crime and the volume of the footfall, and it also depends on nighttime economy as well, because an area that has a nighttime economy needs obviously support with police officers later on into the evening. So we use DWOs, dedicated ward officers, and PCSOs for that as well. We've undergone some more thorough stop and search training, and that's continuing at the moment. I know that stop and search is a topical subject, but there is a program for stop and search enhanced training and retraining. And we've also completed various joint VAWG, so that's violence against women and girls, VAWG. Violence against women and girls events with Ealing Council and partners in our hotspot locations. And we have conducted 16 of those thus far to try and protect females who feel vulnerable and well, females, women and girls who feel vulnerable. We've also done multiple walk and talk events where we advertise that we're going to be at a certain location at a certain time, and we ask our female police officers to go there, and we encourage any females that are feeling vulnerable or feeling upset or want to talk to us on a one-to-one basis with another female. We encourage them to come down, and we walk through that area where they're not happy with, and they tell us what they're not happy with, and we then take that back, feed it back, and if it's something that we can rectify, we'll throw resources at it to make sure it is right. If it's something as simple as lighting not being brilliant because it's covered by a bush or something like that, we'll organise that through the council, who help us with everything on that. And the joint partnership working with the Ealing Council, I've always said, is good, and it remains that way. So 16 days of action for that thus far. And moving on from that, we've had an operation called Op Vigilant, which is deployments in Southall and Ealing that we've conducted so far, where we have officers that have had enhanced training on behavioural detection, and they are specifically looking for key movements, key things in someone that they're observing, where they are either going to commit a crime, or we believe that they're not right in the location that they're at, or don't seem to be doing anything right. But they have had enhanced training. I haven't had that training, but they have, and we have managed to detain, to stop, question and detain and arrest several people in those areas who are wanted for quite serious crimes against women and girls. So that is already proving successful, and we will continue to roll that out on locations where we feel that we have significant reason to do that. We've also been working on Op Pegasus, which I'm actually part of and have been running with my acting Sergeant John Tween, who's done a fantastic job. We've done 55 now operations working with British Transport Police and drugs dogs, and we've had knife arches, and we have arrested multiple people carrying weapons from British Transport Police trains. Predominantly, we have made it that it's generally Ealing Broadway, Southall Station, and we've done Acton and Northolt, and we've got other ones lined up to do. We will continue to do that. That's very successful and is working very well, and just enhances the fact that we are doing everything we can to protect members of the public, especially women and girls on trains, because we're working with British Transport Police and outside the station and inside the station. Our officers with plain clothes, I'm giving away some tactics now. Our officers with plain clothes in there, that if anyone sees the police, turns around and does a quick double back, we stop and talk to those people. We also have drugs dogs and various other dogs in the station as well. So that's very successful and we'll carry on. Operation Nightingale is another one that we are utilising, where we have hotspot policing deployments in key locations within the borough, where we know that during the course of a week, there are certain crimes that are committed in that location. So we make sure we flood that location with key officers who are looking for offences that they have been pre-briefed about. And also that has been successful, not only in driving down crime, but also in arresting key people that have caused us issues within those areas. We also have a whole new estate strategy, which is music to my ears, because the Commissioner and the Mayor have gone back now to saying that no ward should be further in walking distance than 20 minutes from a police station or a police base. That's a long-term piece of work, because many years ago, to cut costs, the Met sold some of our estate. We had to save 800 million in 1 year. But now it's proven quite challenging, because some of the wards are 25, 30 minutes away walking distance. They can get there quicker if they rely on public transport. But the new format is 20-minute walk to the ward, which is music to my ears, because like I say, sometimes it's an hour's walk and the officers have to walk an hour there and walk an hour back. And that's quite challenging to do when you're out on foot all day anyway. So yeah, that is the plan, and that's the longer term plan, because that's not going to happen overnight. We also had a councillor engagement session, which was actually here, where we briefed into councillors regarding the ward panels and the possible at the time involvement in local forums. That was discussed as well. So they're just a few of the things that we've done so far to try, the tangible things that we've done so far on the borough to try and make it safer. People out there on the streets, we're doing enhanced training with officers, and we're reinforcing our values and our standards within the Met. I'm losing my voice now. Sorry.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, it's actually really interesting to hear about all the operations taking place in the detail that you've given, because usually we're going through statistics and data, and sometimes your mind can become numb looking at all the statistics and percentages and charts. And actually a lot of what you explains a lot of what we have probably been seeing walking around Ealing, thinking, oh, what's that going on, and what's that and now it kind of makes sense. So I've got a couple of questions, but I'm keen to go to the board and get all the questions first. So first Geeta, then Councillor Hirsch, and then.
Thank you. I was in Ealing last week, and I noticed two people, and if this is, can I understand, because what you've described as operations sound fantastic, and the work that's going on. However, my question is that there were two police officers near the Lloyds Bank horse, and it says something about safer bank. I can't even remember, but I walked past thinking, what is that about? What is this? What, am I supposed to walk up to them and speak to them, or what's going on here? And I had no idea what the point was, and felt like I don't know whether they were giving advice on how to do safer banking, to be safer in Ealing, But my point is that there's probably a really good reason, which you're going to describe now. However, if that was supposed to be something about public engagement or getting information, like I've sometimes seen in the City of London, it's very clear, and I've walked up to them and talked to them. This just seemed like two officers, and the reason I'm raising it is because, not because they weren't doing a good job, because I'm sure that's what they were trying to do, but it just felt like a waste of time. And nobody seemed to speak to them, and we walked past them twice and it was exactly the same.
Thank you, councillor. Was that Ealing Broadway?
Yeah, and I'm not a councillor,
Oh.
on the public, but yes,
Okay,
it was.
apologies. So that's one of the operations that I haven't mentioned. There are many more operations that we're actually doing. There's an operation called Operation Bank Safe at the moment, where we are working with Safer Transport Police. So our other partners, not British Transport, Safer Transport Police, which is our road traffic policing officers. They often look at taxi ranks. They often look at buses. They don't do trains because that comes under British Transport, but they're Safer Transport officers. So we have noted over the last year or so that there's quite a high volume of cash that's removed from banks in Ealing Broadway, and quite a large number of those people are being followed off from the banks and then distracted at a later stage, and then money being stolen. Very few are harmed, but it's distraction. So we had one the other day, I won't go into too many details, but they withdrew £40,000 from a bank in cash, took that money to their car, left it in the car, went and got a Greg's sausage roll, come back to find their car had been broken into and the £40,000 cash gone. I'm not going to say what bank it is or who that is, but we are working with Ealing CCTV, Ealing Council CCTV, British Land CCTV. So we have a big operation running at the moment. That's just one example of officers being near cash points and looking at other officers being in plain clothes and officers in uniform being asked to stop people who we think may be up to no good and following people. Because how they do it, they're quite clever. They work in twos or threes and they put a mark on someone's shoulder just by saying, hello, how are you going to help you? And there might be a sticker on their shoulder. And it's generally vulnerable people or the older people that we're trying to protect. So we are out there doing that. And I would almost bet all of my salary that that's what they're doing in Ealing Broadway.
So that makes sense. So it's not about engagement with the public. It's actually doing this job of just saying that we're here. So know that we're doing, okay.
But what I would add to that is if ever you see police officers, please feel free to go up and speak with them. You know, we like to engage with people. That's our role. And in actual fact, it makes our day quite interesting. So please, if that happens again, please go up and speak with them.
James.
Yeah, Chair, do you mind if I just come in and explain about two other operations that seem to have gathered a bit of local news interest? So on the 3rd of April and also on the 12th of April, we had some live facial recognition operations in Ealing of varying degrees of success and have been reported locally. So this is where we work with other specialist units within the Met Police. It has achieved or contributed to some negative and positive press, but if you've got nothing to hide, then there's not necessarily nothing to worry about, what some people may say. But the facial recognition links people onto what they look like, and it will be a determiner of whether police go and speak to people. And the last time we had the operation on the 12th, I think it was certainly in Ealing, there were 3 significant arrests and 1 that followed. So some of those operations are very well advertised. And if you read the Ealing Gazette, there's a gentleman there who likes to report on police matters. He reports on that in a favourable way. And it's another proactive tool that the police in London can use to prevent, deter crime locally in Ealing.
Councillor Ash.
Thank you. I have got rather a lot of questions here. I agree with you. It's really nice to not have numbers and concentrate on content and questions and interaction. Yeah, definitely the facial recognition has made it up into people's awareness and discussions. I agree. It's a good thing, because one thing I hear a lot from my residents is concerns about the traffic links, you know, the traffic hotspots, Broadway. I now hear even people saying to me, I avoid Broadway, it's not safe. So it has seeped into people's consciousness. I've heard that now from several people who claim that's a no-go zone now, which is a bit worrying. Even my smaller tube station I've got in my ward, Ealing Common, gets remarks like that. And I hear from residents, you know, there's drug dealing going on a Friday night, there's antisocial behavior, etc. So these, even the little spots, attract crime. So I hope we'll eventually also make your kind of transport police operation into the smaller ones, because even they attract that. That leads me on a bit that this, what I think you've mentioned, you really still need to rely on public communication. They tell you about these hotspots. So the Ealing Common Tube hotspot, you know, it's the residents' observations, it's the dog walkers who see the drug dealing and drugs smuggling and whatever going on. But some of them also tell me we've given up to tell the police because we don't go through the phone lines, nothing happens. So there's quite a bit of frustration there. And of course, that, thinking about your new database, if you don't get people coming in, phoning up, saying this happens, that happens, and they feel it's really worthwhile, you're missing out on these informations. So that is really still something. It's the old story, kind of how can we make sure people are heard, or they have a better way to report observations because they know what's going on their doorstep. How can we make sure that this is feeding better your new database, and you've got better resources to actually listen to their messages or emails or whatever, in order for them also to feel they're heard and it's taken into consideration. So that is still something missing, maybe also missing to my ward panel, which is not ever happening in Ealing Common, it seems. Ealing Common, very generally a safe ward, except for the tube station and the usual kind of things, but still people are, it feels increasingly concerned about safety. Sorry, long rambling thing, but I think still thinking about community engagement, how we make sure we hear them and something is happening so they feel it's worth actually us reporting.
Sorry, just to kind of echo your comment on the ward panel and it being missing in Ealing Common, it'd be good to understand where we're at on that and what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully that's working. Yes. So thank you, Councillor. A lot of observations, information, but all received. And this is what we need. We need this from members of the public. 9 times out of 10, when I go to public meetings, I always say that we don't have enough people, members of the public, call us or talk to us because we rely on that information. And it's very important. And the reason being is that every time we get a call about a certain location, a pin gets dropped onto a map, and then that becomes a hotspot if there are lots of calls for that area, and then we can flood the area with police and deal with the initial problem. Now, if it's an ongoing problem, I'll reverse back from that. If it's an urgent problem, please advise all your community to call 999 if someone's in danger, if you think something's happening there and then where it needs an immediate police response. If it's something that can be dealt with in the next half an hour to an hour, then it's 101. If it's long term and it's a problem that's there once a week and it's been there for 3 weeks, then that's a neighbourhood role really, because we deal with the long term engagement and long term problem solving. So around the station, I would suggest that that's an email to the Ealing Broadway team to say, please, can you help us? This is what's happening. And this is what we would like to, and give us the dates and the times that it's happening. Now, the Ealing Broadway sergeant, who also looks after Ealing Common and Northfield, James Lenton, is very, very proactive. And they deal with a lot of crime, and we deal with a lot of people who are causing crime within those areas. So he will be more than happy to deal with the problems around Ealing Common and around the tube station. For instance, when we get travellers pull up on the common, encampments are normally on Warwick Road. It's normally my one PCSO, Emma, who's not scared of anything, who goes down there and gets rid of them. One PCSO deals with a whole group and they listen to her and they all go. She's absolutely fantastic. But that's because it's driven and run by James Lenton, who is probably the best sergeant I've got on Ealing Borough, to be honest. And strange you should mention the ward panels, because I had a conversation with the 3 wards today around Ealing Broadway, Northfield and Ealing Common to ask them when they last had a meeting. Unfortunately, Ealing Common seems to have dropped off the radar. So I asked why. Apparently the ward chair has not been in contact with us at all. So we've sent out today an email back to the ward chair just to say, are you okay? Please can we arrange a ward panel meeting? We haven't had one for quite a while. We feel that we need to, and we need to reinvigorate the Ealing Common. I know the Ealing Broadway ward panel meeting is regular because there are about 20 to 25 people that turn up to that. It's the biggest ward panel that we have. Northfield, I'm not so sure about, but I am told that there was one about a month and a half ago. But I will double check on that with James Lenton when he's back. He's not in today. I was talking to the PCSOs who generally facilitate and run the ward panel meetings. And I've made this commitment. I've said this before. I've made a commitment to go to at least 2 ward panel meetings for every ward for the next 12 months. So that's how comes I know that Ealing Common hasn't been there. And when it does happen, I will be attending. So that email's gone out today.
Yes, and then we'll go to
So-
councillor Anand.
Yeah, because you just mentioned when people report and call up, and the more they call up, the more you get your red pin. Sometimes it's in these locations, it's really just 2 or 3 people, because they're either very observant or they're dog walkers, or they're these people who care, who might phone up. So you might not get a lot of calls, but it's still kind of signaling a problem, because well, you have got just a lot of people who might not bother, and you will have that one person in the neighborhood who keeps at it, but then gets frustrated if nothing happens, because if you think, oh, it's just one person, does not mean there's not a problem. It's just one person who bothers, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and I agree with you. So I think that one person, if it's a long-term problem, would be better off emailing the Safe Neighbourhood team, because we have the time literally to make that engagement. We have the time to get back to that person. We have the time to go around and see them as well, whereas response team are generally firefighting all the I grades, the immediate grades, and going from call to call to call. So they sometimes aren't as good with the communication with what they've done as perhaps neighbourhoods would be. We're trying to educate them, but it's not easy to do when you're being told by your sergeant, go on to the next I grade, on to the next I grade. So yeah, please contact Safe Neighbourhoods. Thank you.
Councillor Anand?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, my apologies. Could you kindly reverse my apologies to attendance, please? Then thank you, John, for putting forward my apologies. I thought I might not make it, but thank you, Lee, for the update. And I just want to say that the MWalk Strategy Action Plan was agreed at Cabinet last week on Wednesday in this very room, and we're proud to be working with our partners also. We're very proud to hold you accountable on delivering on those action plans for the next few years. And of course, there'll also be sort of developments where we will be scrutinizing the report every 3 months to see how our partners are performing at the Safer Ealing Partnership Board. And we'll also be working with them to make sure that we really do deliver on our 3-year plan. But it's really important that, you know, we did have a clear strategy in Ealing in place, particularly to understand our commitment towards MWalk and also supporting our partners. And I want to thank Lee and his team for being part of that journey. It's not going to be easy, but this is where we have to listen to the young people, the young girls and women in our borough, to make sure that they do feel very safe for that. I'd also like Lee to bring up, Chair, through yourselves, of course, is the Eid-related disorder that we had on South of Broadway during Eid a few weeks back. There are further events of such kind, celebratory events, which are coming up in the year. which would be the Indian, the Pakistani, and the Afghanistani Independence Day. And I know last year we had a little bit of a disruption as well during those celebrations. I think it's important for us, or especially for the Metropolitan Police, to be more enhanced patrols, maybe some, traffic closures, management of traffic during those sort of events when are happening, controlling the crowd a little bit better. And also we really want to ensure the safety for the residents and of course our police officers as well, because if we're looking at the video a couple of weeks back, it wasn't very safe for police officers as well at that point, whereas there were so many families who were out there celebrating Eid. It was the last dinner before everybody sort of broke off from the Ramadan. And I just felt that we really need to ensure that there are strategies in place to be able to support the residents. And of course, you might need to work with community leaders, better coordination with community leaders, so that people can promote peaceful celebrations. It's being a bit more proactive and a bit more vigilancy on the main high streets, particularly in Southall, Broadway, to make sure that people can feel safe, and we are allowing people to celebrate, but there has to be peace and order. And that disorder did disturb me, because what I saw on the social media wasn't very nice.
If I may, Chair, thank you, Councillor. So just to give you an update on some of our proactivity, Sam and I met with some leading faith leaders from the Muslim community last Monday. I think it was last Monday, and I've just received the write-up from our faith officer tonight. We have asked them for feedback. They were very proactive in telling us what works and what doesn't work. And we certainly have a plan going forward to engage more with the community. But at the same time, it's a fine balance of respecting the faith and allowing them to have those celebrations. But you may or may not be surprised to hear that a lot of those people who are sort of claim inverted commas troublemakers did not come from the borough and came from outside the borough. But I'll let Lee and Sam go on to that in a moment. And we're looking ahead for the next Eid celebrations later this year to listen to them and get some good ideas from the community, what works and what doesn't work. We did also raise, and I have spoken to you before, Councillor, about the Independence Days coming up in August, somewhere 15th, 16th, and a bit later. 14th, thank you, Lee. 14th, 15th, and 19th. And you're all right. Last year, I know for a fact, I spoke to the officers who were nearly very seriously injured in that matter, and I think that's dealt with. I think the individual, I can't remember whether he's been to court or not yet, Lee, but that was dealt with. And we're looking, and if I could hand over next to Sam, who comes from the department within the Met that looks at more of the deployments and resources, can give you more update on that. But in the initial request, we are being proactive. We are working with local community leaders, particularly the Islamic and Jewish faith. I think there was another meeting the following day with Jewish community leaders, wasn't there? So we are reaching out, particularly what's going on in the world. Ealing seems to be, sometimes Southall in particular, a microcosm of what's going around in the world in particular. So we are listening to what you're saying. We are being proactive amongst the community. If I could just hand over to Sam, you could talk, or do you want to go? Yeah, Lee can go and give you a bit more of an answer as well. Thank you.
So I'll give you a bit more of an update on the incident because I was Silver Command for it. My Sergeant Lawrence Bisdee was an acting inspector on the day, and he was bronze on the actual street. So I had all the planning for it, and historically, the end of Ramadan, so the day before Eid, the end of Ramadan, so after the last feasting is when families and groups come out within Southall to celebrate. And there were indeed lots of families, lots of children, lots of people out celebrating. But during the course of the evening, around about 23:30 hours, there were people dancing on top of the bus stop, and it was about to go through. we had to get people off of that bus stop, because if people go through that and they put their arms up, it's going to slice them all the way up, and you've got a catastrophic bleed, and that's potentially a death that could happen. So we got people down. We told people to come down. We weren't going to get up there themselves. We got people down. One individual wouldn't come down, was causing a lot of problems with the people that are around, trying to encourage them to go against police. We ended up making sure he got down, and whilst we were having words with him, we hadn't put handcuffs on or anything. While we were having words with him, all of a sudden we were surrounded by 200 or 300 people, and bottles were thrown at the officers. Rubbish was thrown at them. Street furniture in the form of chairs was thrown at them as well. So, making a dynamic decision, I told the officers to withdraw, but they couldn't withdraw because they were surrounded and getting 360 degrees, rubbish and bottles thrown at them. One female officer was punched in the face, unknown to me at the time. She was on a cordon and has got a black eye and a swelling on her nose still. So that shows you the level of aggression from the crowd. The person that we arrested that was on that bus stop eventually, because they did commit various crimes, was not from this area. They were from a long way off. Other people on other Independence Days who were from East London that travelled here to cause problems weren't from the area either. So it would seem as if we have lots of people now coming from outside the area to join in the celebrations, but then to turn it to attack police. So we had a hot debrief that night. I wasn't aware that police officer had been punched in the face because she was from response team. But we had our TSG come out, territorial support group. We had the helicopter flying up above to video it all, so it is videoed. Every officer had their body worn video on, and we've recorded lots of faces. And we will be prosecuting those that have been involved in violence because it's classed as violent disorder. We've set aside some officers to go through the hours of footage of body worn video, and we will bring in people to account for their actions on that night, because I don't think that's acceptable for a family evening for it to be overtaken by a group of people that aren't from the area and to just attack police. The other thing is, obviously, families are concerned because they had to get their small children out of the way as well. We've not been made aware of any injuries to any families, thank goodness, or to any children. No reports came through to us about that. And I'd like to think that if people had been hurt, they would have reported that to us. But there is an ongoing plan. I've debriefed the incident with Sean Lynch, our superintendent, and we have a plan which I think Sam is going to talk to you about with the way forwards. MO6.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So firstly, apologies, I didn't really introduce myself when I started talking earlier. I'm the Partnership and Prevention Inspector for Ealing. So I work closely with the local authority, and I have a number of teams that deal with various engagements with the community. So my work will be fairly key in the next Eid event that we have on the calendar, which is June, and then the various Independence Days. What I can bring from my previous command is knowledge of how we plan large-scale events and how we engage with the communities before and after to ensure that they pass as smoothly as possible. We've started that already. We've met key partners from Southall, as Mr. Herring was saying. Mr. Chowdhury, the local imam, is keen to assist us, as are a number of people. What we're going to get from the community is what they want from the event and what they don't want. And they've been fairly clear about what they don't want. And it'll be ourselves and Jess's team and the local authority that are going to help us to deliver that. And it will involve key communication in the build-up to the event. And we need to be stricter on certain premises who may be exceeding their license and drawing people to the area. Because what we understand at the moment is people want to come and celebrate in restaurants and leave the area peacefully. They don't want large gatherings, and they don't want any cause for the large gatherings to be there. So, for example, some of the street traders we're going to try and target in the build-up to June, so that they're not going to be there. We want to make it as quiet as possible for people to come to the area. We don't want them to be attracted by any particular means. Sorry. So in the build-up to the event, there'll be key meetings between the local community, ourselves, and the local authority as to what we can do to help each other in delivering the event. Already mentioned the things that we're talking about are parking services, perhaps moving some of the vehicles that are parking illegally, what we can do in terms of removing them from there, enhanced CCTV coverage, enhanced licensing patrols to target the street peddlers, people that are doing perhaps some of the painting and selling food without a license. We don't want any of that. And this is what we've been told by the community. And also reviewing what happened and what support we will need. There was a delay in getting the support to Lee on the night, but we know potentially we may need support from other areas, but it's important that we police this locally. We are the local police officers and we are invested in the community. So we want to have that local presence within the community. But if we need support, we want the Met to have it ready for us. So that's part of the work we're doing at the moment, alongside the partner and community meetings, is a meeting with the command that can give us some officers on the night and send them to us. Because in an ideal world, what we want to do is, as the groups start forming, we want to disperse people early. And we don't want to get to the point where we've got 1,000 people to disperse, because it's almost impossible unless you've got 200 or 300 cops to do it. So if we if we understand what the community want and what time they want the celebrations to finish, we can prepare that, or we can prepare that for say if it was 11 o'clock, and we can go in with various powers and start dispersing people from the area. It was mentioned before that people were throwing rubbish and projectiles at the police. Again, that's something that we can work with the local authority to try and get the rubbish cleared earlier in the day. Councillor, you've got your...
Yeah, Councillor, and also Councillor Raza online, I do see your hand up, so we will get to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to say thank you for the responses from all three officers, and I appreciate that. It was a very difficult task for all of you on the day because there was such a huge crowd. But again, it's not the families, it's not the people that are celebrating that cause these kind of disorder. But I welcome the fact that you'll be further planning to make sure that there is a plan in place for coming Eid and also the Independence Days, which will be in sometime in August. If we are planning ahead to protect the community and work with the community, I think it's also important that you liaise with the local councillors within that ward and the S&T teams, so there is a clear plan which is shared by all the community leaders, the S&T teams, and of course yourselves will be the frontline officers who will be sort of managing on the day. I'm very confident that when you work with your partners, there is always a sort of a way forward to make sure that we can bring harmony to the area rather than disruption. Again, I think it's important for faith leaders and faith organizations to early start giving out the message that, well, while we're celebrating Eid, we need to think about looking after the children, the families, the elderly, and Southall is a magnet. We all love going to Southall to celebrate, whether it's Eid, whether it's Diwali, whether it's wedding shopping. You know, it's the most vibrant place and everybody wants to come to Southall. We have the best restaurants. So people want to come and really have good time with their families. But to protect those families and the police officers, we really do need to have the action plan in place. And I'd love to speak with both yourself and Lee later on to see, or later on in the coming weeks, to see what kind of plan we have in place to make sure that we as a local authority are also part of that.
Thank you. Could I let Jess just step in before and then back to you, Sam?
Thanks, guys. So I was just going to add, I've already had some conversations with Lee and other police colleagues, and I flagged from a council perspective the fact we need to have a think about how we approach this. So there's one of the key challenges in this context is the council has quite a well-developed approach to events, but they're events that are organised by people. So we have huge religious events and other celebrations in different parts of the borough each year, both kind of council run and also run by parts of the community. But they're formal events that have an organiser and a group and a voluntary kind of organisation that owns that, and there is a process in place for that. What we're talking about here is non-event events. So there is no event around Eid. It is people travelling to Southall and effectively celebrating. And clearly in more recent years, more people from farther afield want to go to Southall to mark that particular occasion. And that's also the case in relation to the Independence Days and often around cricket games as well. We see similar kinds of behaviour. But it's difficult in the context, there's no one person to engage with. You can't have a conversation with an organizer. And in recent years, due to the amount of traffic and the disruption to TfL and buses and different things, we've started to close the Broadway on those nights to try and keep people safe, because significant amounts of people, cars driving around, it's a difficult combination. And the police specifically requested that the roads have been closed to keep people safe. That was a right decision to make, but by closing the roads, effectively you're creating a space that invites more people to come and celebrate. And it feels like we've closed the roads specifically for people to come to Southall. So we've solved one problem and effectively we've helped make it more popular. So this is also something my team don't have significant skills around. We're not event planners. We don't have that skill set. And the majority of the pre-planning is going to be with colleagues like parking. We're at the event most recently, and they do work around it, but I think there's more work in it. Street trading sits in highways. There's a number of different highways arrangements, coordinating rubbish collections, all those kinds of things sit outside of my service's oversight, but are definitely things that we could get much more joined up around, which will just reduce the risk of stuff. So I've started a conversation internally with emergency management colleagues and others around how can we better coordinate this pre-event to make sure that everybody can go and have a nice time. Families can enjoy their family times. And if people do come to Southall and want to get rowdy, get out of hand, then we're quite ahead of them to enable the police to then do their job, which is to make sure there's no disorder. So hopefully we're able to pull something much more coordinated together, because the numbers we're seeing now aren't kind of just local people enjoying those events. It's definitely becoming a destination, which is a change in the last probably 5 or 6 years, definitely.
Lee?
And Councillor, thank you very much for your invitation to speak with yourself with reference to the events coming up. I will definitely take you up on that. I will be doing the planning for the next event and the future events. And as Jess is quite right, we have the same issues when it's cricket as well. It's very emotive. So even those, we got the World Cup Cricket 2020 fixtures in June and July, I think. So that's on the agenda as well as Eid and then the Independence Days. And again, as Jess has just mentioned, none of those there's not an organizer. So we have to try and deal with it. What I will say is Eid up until now has always been family orientated. This time it was not, it's changed. So we have to change our policing tactics and our risk assessment, and we've got to do better. And doing better is about engaging with our communities and engaging with key contacts as yourself. So 100% I'll be taking you up on that. Thank you.
I suspect also just kind of an observation, the fact that these kind of calendar dates have not been an issue in the past, but now have started to be, that social media might have a lot to do with it as well. Things like TikTok. So, perhaps keeping an eye on the trends taking place online as well would be good. So
we have a dedicated team that can do that for us. It's our local intelligence team, and we have a central team called Red Desk that look at intel that comes into the Met on a 24-hour period. So I should be able to get enhanced information of anything that's been put out on social media about coming down to Southall. So it will make us more aware in future. Like I say, this has not been the case on any of the Eid events in the past, but I can see it being the same from now on and only getting bigger as word gets out. I'll go down to Southall, we had a good laugh down there, throwing stuff at police, and we didn't take it that way, obviously, but that's how public will see it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Raza, online, would you like to join us? And
yeah, sorry, it's just been struggling to sort of keep the bandwidth going, so I'm keeping the camera off. It's good to see everybody here. Thank you to Councillor Anand for raising the Eid thing, because I was going to do the same, so I'm really glad we've managed to have a discussion on that. That was very helpful and good to know that the police are really on it for future events. I was basically going to say that I had the need to report online recently, and I have to say that it was a very smooth and a very quick reaction that I got. It was very surprising that within 10 minutes I had a phone call back from the police saying thank you very much for reporting online, and within I think 24 hours I had a response team with 2 people coming to see me to ask me about what I was reporting and how I felt and wanted to go forward. So I'd like to commend everybody on that actually the online reporting I found was very smooth and very good. So I have been recommending that to all my residents, to perhaps ones that struggle to hang on the phone forever or find it quite frustrating. The sort of online route was actually very smooth. I had a little list of things that I was going to run through. You spoke about a youth officer. Being a trustee of the Young Ealing Foundation, we've tried very hard to get the youth voice onto as many boards as possible. What we found is that young people are very reluctant to come to things in the evening, particularly if they don't get like an allowance or an incentive to get there. It might be because of getting transportation or other things, but that's something that we've heard over and over again when we've tried to get young people onto boards and onto things, is that they feel there should be like an allowance to get there. So I'm just parking that on notes for you. And we've spoken a lot about policing in central Ealing and a little bit about Southall, but we feel that Greenford kind of gets left off. And people living in Greenford feel that very strongly, as that there doesn't seem to be as much emphasis on policing in Greenford. And particularly, I mean, a bit like what you were talking about earlier, our ward panel seems to have fallen by the wayside a bit. I have been contacted by our sergeant and by people to actually get that up and running again. So I'm quite pleased that people are thinking along those lines to get one up and running fairly soon. On the PCSOs and general visibility, as in the run up to the election, we've been knocking on quite a few doors. The number one thing that I'm hearing back from people in Greenford is their concerns about policing. The fact that they don't see any police, the fact that they don't feel that they are safe in that kind of reassurance, I guess, is what we're looking for. And because we have had stabbings, some of them fatal, in our area, it is something that concerns a lot of people, particularly elderly people living on their own. And on some of our estates, it's actually quite crucial that we have that police presence. Also, what they've mentioned, actually today I was on the Cowgate estate, and people are worried about, the police come and have a little walk around at 3 in the afternoon, but the problems aren't at 3 in the afternoon, they're more likely to be after dark, and quite how the CCTV can help them. So I think there does need to be a bit of reassurance in areas like that to sort of say, we are here, we are looking out and keeping things safe for you on these estates. So yeah, that's a bit of a mixed bag there for you, but that's what I had on my list. Thank you.
Okay, James.
Thank you, Councillor. You must have been reading my mind, because I have discussed with your recent incident. So thank you for your praise. That's really kind. And if we can speak afterwards, that'd be great. I can give you some more updates. Also, we do have a dedicated inspector now looking in and around the areas of Greenford and Northolt, just to give Lee a bit of a break. So I will take your details from Jess or from the chair, and I will get Inspector Anil Sharma to get in touch with you tomorrow or the day after and try and get some coordinated reassurance response to your queries there, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, that'd be brilliant.
Councillor, it's Lee Ballard here. Can I just ask, was it the new sergeant that's reached out to you, Patrick Brown?
No, I think it was Anil Sharma actually,
Oh,
because
okay.
we met at an event and we spoke about it then as well. And also we were a bit concerned. Obviously, our PCSO Arthur Gray has retired, and he was a big figure, featured quite highly in Greenford, and a trusted source actually, where people felt they could sort of talk to him and get reassurance from him. So I think we're really feeling that gap, and people keep asking about, oh, when's the new Arthur turning up? And so our conversation started there and then ended up with we must get ward panels up and running again. So it was actually Anil Sharma who got in touch.
Okay, so Anil Sharma is my counterpart for the geographical wards. He's taken the sort of top half of the borough, and I've taken the sort of south or West Ealing and Ealing. So Anil Sharma is covering North Alton, Greenford. He's very experienced in the role because he was at Hounslow previously, so he comes with a wealth of knowledge. But more importantly, as well, is that we have another sergeant based out of the North Alt ward base called Patrick Brown, and we have another sergeant based out of West Ealing called Katie Weston. So we now have 12 sergeants for the 24 wards. So quick calculation means 2 wards per sergeant, whereas some sergeants before had 3 wards, some sergeants had 4 wards, which is quite difficult to manage. And that's part of the new Met for London uplift. So it's a better ratio, and the sergeants can keep an eye on what's going on. So I know Ben Kozlicki and Patrick Brown are very keen. They work out from the North Alt base. They're keen to resolve all the issues that are occurring around there. So as Mr. Herring says, if he can touch base later on, he will most definitely pass that information on to Anil, and I will certainly do the same as well. So thank you very much for your comments.
No, thank you.
Do we have any other questions online? And from the board? Okay, in that case, I'll go on to a question I had. Pretty much everything's been answered apart from going all the way back to, oh, it looks like someone's put their hand up. No, it's it's you. Okay. The stop and search training, I just wanted to pick up on that. So you spoke about there being kind of enhanced training for stop and search. What exactly does that entail, if you're able to speak about it?
Unfortunately, I only have the headline figure or the headline bit of information here that was from the new Met for London. So I can go away and find that out from you.
Yes,
for you. I'll speak to our learning and development team unless either of my colleagues are aware. Yeah, Sam apparently can explain some bits. So
okay, great.
Sam, thank you.
Thank you.
So a lot of the stop and search training that's been delivered to the new recruits is about unconscious bias, and it's trying to work with us to improve our positive outcome rates, because stop and search historically has been disproportionate. It is disproportionate in Ealing if you look at the stop and search volumes and the outcomes by ethnicity. So we are working on that. We have a community monitoring group that holds us to account for stop and searches. That's chaired by Bishop Lloyd Crossfield. Yep, in Southall. We also have the Citizens Tribunal panel. 5 of them have signed up for ride-alongs, which is exciting for next month, to go along with the funded ASB team that Jess funds out of his budgets, to see how stop and search in action, to see specifically around drugs and the London Race Action Plan, what we're doing, why we target drug users in certain areas. There's more that we can do on stop and search training, because we do need to improve our outcome rates. They are above what the Met's class is satisfactory, but they are lower than other areas. So it is an area that we are trying to address. But we have a lot of officers at West area who conduct searches within Ealing. And when we have events that take place on the borough, specifically murders and serious violent crime, we do have the MO7 task force who come in and deliver stop and searches on the streets for us. They have enhanced training and they can deliver training locally for us, but that's more specific to officer confidence in delivering searches. And excuse me, frog in my throat. Part of the stop and search training, which I haven't touched on, is the quality of encounter. Historically, the quality of encounter of individuals has not been what it should be, and that's something that we are working on. That everybody who is stopped in searches is dealt with fairly, and the searches are polite. All searches have to be recorded on body-worn video. We get quite a few. Well, there's very few complaints are upheld about stop and searches. We've recently made some changes to the body-worn video cameras, so it records now. It pre-records audio and video before you activate. Before it was just video and not audio. So that will bring some confidence, because that was a recommendation by the community monitoring groups about stop and search.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions or remarks? Councillor Hirsch and then Geeta.
Just a titchy one, because Councillor Rassa mentioned online reporting, so I'm just checking out, because I thought I've done that again. Because on police.uk, you can look your area, Ealing Common, for example, you've got the team there, and then you look at contacts and say contact details not available. So maybe just an oversight on the site or so. So they're named, but there's no contact details. I can show you.
Is there not an email address? Because there was specific instructions for, right, okay, I apologise for that. I will deal with that. That's a bit of an embarrassment, because I decreed that there should be contacts on every website that have details of an email address to get to. The email addresses, we've spent a long time and we have standardised them. So every ward now, the email address is the ward, so Ealing Broadway, or Ealing Common or Northfield, whatever it is, the ward itself, followed by @met.police.uk. And that will get you through it. But if that's not shown on there, people wouldn't know that. So I can only apologise. I will take that away and get that rechecked and make sure it's on there. Thank you.
Thanks, and Geeta.
Yes, one specific question. Earlier, you mentioned that if there's police, go and talk to them. As after the marathon, when we came back at Ealing Broadway, there are a whole load of police and transport police and police at Ealing Broadway station. In that sort of situation, would you suggest going and asking why are they there?
There's probably a very good reason why there's a lot of people there. They're either coming back or going to an event, or it might be a specific operation, but feel free to go and speak to them. A police officer or someone with rank, either a sergeant inspector or my rank chief inspector if they're around, and they should give you a good answer.
And the other follow-up question was, you mentioned unconscious bias, which is something at the August meeting that I was at came up, because we're talking about searches at the time, and some stats that was thrown up about the number of people that are of colour that get stopped and they're holding they've got a weapon on them in a place like Southall. And my question was, well, the majority of people that are wandering around Southall tend to be of colour, so that's kind of, and it didn't make sense. So it sounds like something's being done about that, but that then linked to violence against women and young girls, and the culture work that you talked about, which is a big part of the work going forward with the Met Police. What work is being done around unconscious bias in that context?
It's a difficult one to answer because it's led by learning and development. What we can try and do is invite some members to come up to the training headquarters at Hendon, because we've been already, haven't we, Councillor? We've been up to Hendon to see the learning and development programme. We went over to Met CC. Some of the councillors didn't answer phones, but we're listening into phone calls. So that's part of our piece about being transparent. We can try and arrange that. It's not something that we deliver locally. We have a bespoke team that deliver that, and I haven't got a PowerPoint or a show to go through with you, but we can try and arrange a visit to the training centre if people want to go.
I would definitely be interested in following up with that. And I guess it's a question for now, but just curious as to what impact you three have had in terms of your, just, since August, since it was all announced. It's probably a bit of a big question, but like, what's changed for you, really?
How long have you got? It's a very divisive question, but one that we'll quite happily answer. The Commissioner's gone online and mentioned, and thank you, Councillor Annan, to mention it as well. This is not going to be an overnight fix. In New Met for London, we have a specific strategy in place for doing it. We reinforce that message to our officers all the time. I know there's a supervisors meeting tomorrow where it will certainly be reinforced, the values and the principles what we are adhering to now. And it is a time when we look for a bit of patience from the community. I appreciate that's not always easy to have, but we are doing what we can all the time to have more trust, higher standards and less crime. And it won't happen overnight, but certainly I've had over 26 and a half years in the police. It is a time where I think the one constant thing you can get about the police is change. And we go through a lot of change all the time. But one thing we are committed to is working closely with the community and our partners to make that change together. But it will certainly not, and manage everyone's expectations, to coin a phrase, happen overnight. But we are very much committed to making sure we are going to make that change.
Any closing remarks from anyone? If not, then we will move on to our projects update, which is very exciting. We've got 3 new projects that hopefully as a board we will help John in approving this evening. So over to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Probably like to bring a little bit of lightheartedness to the meeting tonight, really. I attended the Safer Neighbourhood Board funding briefing back in February, on the 27th of February, up at Union Street. It was quite an enlightening evening from the point of view of what other Safer Neighbourhood boards are doing with their funding and what they have achieved over the last 12 months. What was very clear from my perspective and what I took away from the meeting was just, I suppose in some respects, just how well organised, and I'm sorry, I don't want to blow my own trumpet here, but just how well organised we were, how good our projects were, and I think more importantly, that we did feedback the outcomes of each of those projects. So I thought to start this evening, I thought we'd just go back over, I've been doing the projects, this will be my 4th year, and I thought it was probably a really good idea to just go back very briefly, just to work out what projects we've done, and particularly for those that are sort of new to the board. So I'll sort of start when I took it over in 2021-22, we supported 3 projects. The Self-Esteem Project, which Snev Nagati is very much a really good project. We supported a project for our Southall, which is fridge magnets, which I have to say still outstanding, but is actually or just about to go into production. And there's Anaya School, who I think Lee and I were subjected to a sit in front of young children and be questioned about what we thought about policing and various activities that was happening across our 7 towns. And I think we both came out of there quite sort of shell-shocked, and they were brilliant. So they were really, really good projects. The outcomes of all 3 were really strong and fitted in with the MOPAC sort of lead. In 2022-23, we were in a position to be able to support 5 projects. We continually supported the Zanaya Foundation again. The Gauntlet project came on board, which was a lovely project, which was again very much for self-defense classes. So it followed the same sort of line as the self-esteem the year before. Arc Academy puts in for some money, but unfortunately that project didn't happen, so we were able to take that project back. We had one of our board members put forward Mia Ali, who again very much a self-defense class, but it was a little bit more for mothers and daughters, which was really good to visit. And the feedback I got from that was really, really, really positive. And the APNA youth group, which was very much a group of adults and children who actually went around the Havelock estate across Southall looking for children sleeping rough. And believe me, there are children out there sleeping rough. And it was to take them off the street and try and give them some sort of better life and put them into sort of services where we could help. So so that was very good. Last year, we were able to support 4 projects, so 23-24. Again, the Gauntlet Academy came forward, and I visited them last week and met with 22 females who were absolutely delighted that this free self-defense class that gave them a lot more confidence, particularly to go out at night, to walk home from stations, and felt that they actually got their life back to be able to go out at night. So I was delighted to see them. We supported a project called Ease, which is on Copley Close, obviously one of our estates in our 7 towns, which desperately needs sort of, help, and to try and get children off the street and to try and help them sort of against knives. Sev Nagati came up again. I visited her group. This time round, it was very much women who had been attacked. So it was a real confidence building exercise for them, but again, to help them defend against anything that may well come up later on in life. And the Zanaya Foundation again, where I've met again a fantastic children, and they've actually presented at this board, and as a result of which actually got some funding from the Met Police. But their project again was very much around just putting children down the right road rather than the wrong road, to talk to them that drug dealing isn't good, and the educational side. So I felt it was a good money well spent, and thanks to Mopac for providing that funding for us. At the meeting, I was delighted to hear that we were to receive similar funding as we have in previous years. And I've written to a number of board members to tell you that we've received £22,787. There's 5,200 admin, which does tend to be given back to us for projects, which I can be just very grateful to Jess and his team for that. So that money is available moving forward. It's been lovely to again speak to previous projects who are keen to apply again for funding. But it's also nice to be able to look at newer projects. So Geeta and I, sitting on the Pithanger panel, spoke to Mind on Music, which is on the Copley Close estate. They're looking at pulling a project together where, again, to talk to the children on the estates, to try and keep them off knife crime, to try and not get them involved in drug dealing, all the stuff that you tend to look at that does happen on estate. But they're doing it by way of getting them to do with music, but also with other sort of aims in mind. They're looking for funding for £4,888, very round number. And the other 2 projects, well, I've got one that's our chair has put forward, which is great news, which is the Ealing self-defense class. The very much around just providing assistance and probably more importantly, the confidence out there and the skills for self-defense, and that is looking for 5,300. The Gauntlet Academy have asked again if they could reapply. I've certainly said yes so far because they don't have anyone else just at the moment, but they couldn't get the application or anything forward for me today. So it is something I will probably send out to you as board members. The reason why I've gone over all these projects now is one of the things that was mentioned at this meeting back on the 27th of February. And again, we're very sort of different, I think, and it wasn't meant just for us, was that it needs to have a paper trail. We need to have a paper trail for the projects that we do support. I know that I always bring them to the board in any event. And again, as I said, it's probably not just meant for us, but there are other boards out there that literally just decide on a project and the board members probably don't even get a say on it. And I think it was more really to try and sort of streamline the applications. I'm not quite sure whether it streamlined it for me. I think it's given me more work, but for the projects in mind, what they now need to do is, instead of filling in an application form, they literally write about their project, they send it over to me, and then I then complete one form for each project that goes in. MOPAC have assured me that even if we don't spend all the money, that we will still receive the full amount. However, there was a discussion round the table which was taken away that they thought that might be a little bit unfair. Personally, I didn't, and I think if they're going to provide Ealing with that money, then we should get it. On that point, we do have surplus in our account, because again of the additional funds that we've got. We do have £11,714.51 to be precise in our account, in our budget. So what MOPAC have said, and I've been very, very upfront with them, what they've said is, look, if we find a project or two or three that needs funding, it may not be something that we have to submit a form to them, because as far as they're concerned, this money has already been spent. So if there is a project out there that misses this time round, but you feel that is worthy of some funding, please get them to get in touch with me. And then what we'll do as a board, we will agree that that is the way forward, but it doesn't necessarily have to go to MOPAC to get approval. But the three projects that I have, or certainly the two at the moment, and the third, which I suspect I will get by the end of the week, I will be putting forward as long as the board agrees, and I hope that we will follow the same line as before, that we won't find any issues with that. Councillor Anand.
When's the deadline for the projects?
The deadline, believe it or not, is today, is the 23rd. But please don't worry, I do have an extension. If there's one thing that Ealing have been very good at, is our applications have been in on time. They are aware that with just a slight change in the system, that it may take a little bit longer for people to, particularly projects. They like to call them bids now. I still call them projects because, you know, I just bids of high street stuff. But so I still call them projects. So as far as I'm concerned, and as far as MOPAC are, they're happy to give us an extension. And really, look, if you see a project and it needs another week or so to get the application form in, then please just, we've got it.
Chair, I could take a particular project that I have in mind offline with yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely fine to listen to that. Has anyone got any questions? I do have a file that tells us exactly what project did what. But honestly, it's been a real pleasure dealing with the projects. To be honest, it's a bit of work behind the scenes, but I have to say, when you meet the participants, and not just the joy, but the confidence they take away from each and every one of the projects that I've attended to, it's an absolute honour to be able to fund them.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions regarding the projects online either? Okay. That takes us on to any other business. So if there's anything anyone wanted to raise before we close the meeting, just do say so now. Yes.
Just a quick question about the online form, which sounds like it's a successful way of doing things. I've got a couple of neighbours that aren't online, but they've one of them knows, because she lives at the end of the road, that normally hear this motorbike, which we hear but never really looked out, but she sees them handing stuff over to people on bikes and stuff. It used to happen at the bottom of Meadville Road by the park, but since that's been with great work from the police has been dispersed, it seems to now just happen on the road. But she's not online to be able to report something like that. It's not something that is causing any danger, but it's the awareness thing. What's the best advice to give somebody who's not online?
So does she have a telephone? So I would suggest it's probably, if she's not online at all, not able to send an email, it's probably best to call 101 and ask for an appointment for a police. Is she mobile at all? Yeah, okay, so there are various options. Can attend Acton Police Station. I know that's probably a long way off and probably not applicable and not the best thing to do. Depends upon their circumstances. So probably best to call 101 and ask for, we can get a car to go to that address. It's a diary car. We can do scheduled appointments where we go. But if you pass me the details, if you haven't passed me the details, I'll make sure that Neighbourhood's team get in contact with this particular person.
I'll speak to her first, obviously get her permission to, about getting in contact, but I think that might be a good way forward. Thank you.
Yep, so a name and address would be perfect, and then I could ask the officers to go around.
Great. Well, if that's everything, the date of the next meeting's still to be confirmed, so we'll be in touch. Hopefully everyone will get an invitation to that. But take care, be safe, and thank you so much for those who attended in person today and online.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.